Well, good afternoon and welcome to Wednesdays in the Hub. Well, in conversation with my own adult children, those living near and far, and echoed by friends and their conversations with adult children, I frequently feel that our ability to make right decisions is being challenged. So I'm sure many of you can relate to that. So today we have with us a guest, Jim D'Elia, who will begin our program today sharing results of a survey. This survey compared responses of adults over age 65 with responses from a group of family members or caregivers of those over 65. The results speak to issues on which we and they usually agree, and then on those issues which we and they disagree dramatically. Jim, welcome. And now
I appreciate it.
you can present and see if our audience agrees with the survey and if it reflects their experience.
Well, thank you, Kathy. I appreciate the introduction. Again, as Kathy mentioned, my name is Jim D'Elia, and my company undertook a survey of older adults and their adult children, about 400 people in total, and came up with some very, very interesting statistics around, as where Kathy mentioned, where we both agree and where we frankly don't agree on priorities and the things that are most important to us as we age at home. And I think that this survey is going to be of really high interest to those that join us here this afternoon. At the back end of the presentation, we're going to spend a few minutes talking through a checklist, a 14-point checklist that really underscores how important it is for us to ensure that we're doing all we can as we make these choices to age at home to remain safe. And so I think that'll be really interesting, and that's interactive. You'll all have an opportunity to answer those questions. All right, Kathy, with that said, what is the next step?
Well, Jim, just present the survey.
Okay. So slide number one, and I think there were about 12 or 13 slides total. This is at a high level. Seniors represent the fastest growing segment of our population here in the United States, if I can call everyone's attention to the box on the left-hand side. We currently account for about 55 million of us at the age of 65 or older. By the end of the decade, that is 2030, we're going to see nearly a 50% growth in our numbers, totaling 75 million plus. And by the way, those of us at 85 and older will represent the fastest growing segment of that demographic. So the bottom line is we're a graying community in the United States. We're getting a bit older. It has much to do with the fact that the baby boomer generation now are retiring at the rate of over 10,000 a day. So quite a few of us out there. Immediately to the right, there are 50 million of us that are caregivers, family caregivers, typically adult children, nieces, nephews, involved in the care of the older adult community. To the right of that, we think this is quite interesting, right? 82% of those families look to outside help on some level for the care of an older adult family member. And finally, for those of us that think we might be a cheap date, we spend over $100 billion a year on home-related services for seniors. So it's a very, very expensive endeavor, and it will continue to grow. All right, again, as Kathy and I pointed out early, the survey was conducted using a company called Bixa, B-I-X-A. We polled seniors and family caregivers, two separate groups, those above 65 and the family caregivers of those age 65 and older. We wanted to understand the national need for services, primarily senior-focused, home-related services, which of course is really the focus of the villages. And then finally to determine the influences on decision-making. What were the drivers? Why do people make the decisions that they make? At a high level, as Kathy pointed out earlier, there were good basic areas of agreement, quite a few areas of friction, and I'm going to carry you through that in just a few minutes. And then, of course, where there might be some opportunity for families to take advantage of outside services. So let's talk first about where we agreed, or where we were aligned, where seniors and their family members were on the same page, so to speak. First one was proximity to a family member. 75% of our seniors polled, and 90% of their family members determined that they are 250 miles or closer to each other. Now you would say, why isn't that identical, 75 or 75 or 90 or 90? Because at the end of the day, some people view the distance a bit differently than others, but suffice to say that directionally speaking, family members and the seniors that they care for agree that they're within close physical proximity. The next one is home type, number 2. 82% of seniors and 70% of those that care for them say loved ones live in a single family home. Number 3, and this is going to be very important as we move through the questionnaire and the poll. 89% of seniors, and frankly, almost an identical number of their caregivers, say tripping and falling is the safety issue they most worry about. What are they most concerned with? And then finally, on family matters, across all services, seniors and caregivers agree that family is the starting point for help. So quite clearly what that's trying to tell us is that, look, if it's time for me to reach out, if I have questions or some concerns about my safety and then perhaps my independence, the first one I'm going to call is someone in the family who I love and trust. Okay, now we're going to talk about where we don't agree, what we call the friction zones. This is the poll of seniors, right? Where do you expect to live? Where are you going to grow older? 82% of seniors expect to stay in their current home. 11% expect to downsize, but let's be clear there. Downsizing, in most cases, is a downsize to another single family home. So it may not be the 3-bedroom home in New Jersey. It may be a 2-bedroom condominium, perhaps for older adults, but the fact is that it is your home. So if you add those two together, that's really 93% expect to live in a single family home. 3% anticipate moving to assisted living. And then finally, 1% of those polled expect to move in with family. Now, there's an interesting statistic that underscores this. 95% of seniors will age at home. Why? Because there simply isn't enough capacity, even if there was interest. The total count of senior living communities, assisted living communities, for example, can only house about 5 to 6% of us throughout the United States. So until they create more capacity for more assisted living communities, even if we wanted to move in greater numbers, there really wouldn't be much room for us there. So here's where we begin to see some differences in opinion. Now, this same set of questions was asked of family caregivers. 50% said they expect their mom or dad or both to live in the current home. 12% expect to downsize, which frankly wasn't a big difference, but here's where it differs quite a bit. 15% anticipate mom or dad or both moving to an assisted living environment. That's dramatically higher than what was the response of the older adult themselves. And here's where it really differs, right? 22% of family caregivers said that they expect a loved one to move in with them, when only about 1% of the respondents, the older adult respondents, said that they expected the same. I can tell you that it's very interesting that these statistics, as you see them here, are frankly much closer to the demographic realities of the older adult communities in the United States. So the point I'm making is that the responses that the seniors gave tend to be more accurate in real life than those that were given by their adult children and loved ones. The family caregivers, they love mom and dad, as I did, but these data points are not quite accurate when it comes to the realities of how we live as we get older. Where they live, is your parent loved one likely to move in the future? Seniors versus family. So again, this is really another angle on the previous two slides. 32% more seniors expect to stay in the current home. 5 times more family caregivers anticipate moving parents to assisted living. And finally, where it really is sticking out like a sore thumb, 20 times more family members expect to have an aging loved one move in with them at some point in the future, as I pointed out on those 2 previous slides. So you can see there are really big differences. And it also says that we haven't really spoken about it enough. We haven't gotten on the same page. We haven't talked about this enough so that we can get everyone to agree on the right approach going forward. This is interesting. Who is in charge? Who is making the decisions on our behalf? When making important decisions about your lifestyle or living environment, who is the final decision maker? Let me call your attention to the left side of the slide under the heading Seniors. 53% of seniors polled say they are the sole decision maker about where they're going to live and how they're going to live. The same respondents only gave family 3% of that authority. So only 3% of those that responded said, my family will make those decisions on my behalf. If I call your attention to the right, family caregivers gave themselves an awful lot of credit, 73%, for making the decision for mom and dad. If I can think of my own personal experiences, I certainly took the lead on a lot of these decisions, but always consulted with my mom about those, I'll call it those last mile issues. I did the homework because it was too much for her. So I suspect a lot of this is, look, I'm going to do the preliminary work. I'll lay the groundwork, but then get back with my mom and dad about the final decisions. But again, almost 3/4 of family caregivers would suggest that they're making these decisions on their own. And then finally, to the right of that, loved ones alone, that is the family more broadly making the decisions for a senior, okay?
So I'm going to take on, I just want to introduce this a little bit because I'd like to focus our viewers on several things. So we agree that the survey indicated that we're in agreement that safety concerns when we choose to age at home are an important issue, and we agree with our kids and our caregivers on that. But I can see that this safety assessment tool that you're going to go into next, Jim, can be used as a tool by our viewers.
Sure.
To help us become more proactive about addressing the 2 issues that they say we don't agree on, and that's where we should age and who is in control. So if our viewers will take a paper and pencil, or if they've downloaded the self-assessment tool from our website, then while you're doing your presentation on the 14 points, Jim, they might want to make a list of some proactive steps that they can take. And there are two good reasons for them to make this list. And this is where we talk about, this is not just for safety, okay? So yes, first you make it because you want to see what needs to be done to make the place where you choose to age right now to be safe. Also, I'm suggesting that they also look at, if their situation changes, if they have an accident or an illness and still would choose to stay at home, what would they need to do to compensate for a walker or a wheelchair, or even if they needed a room available for a full-time person to assist in their daily routines. But the second one is even more important. As you said, it's really important, if we feel that our family is the primary contact when we need something, we need to be able to communicate, and we're not communicating enough. So the second reason to make this list is actually kind of a gift to family members or caregivers. So sharing with them the list, or at least one or two items on the list, could give them peace of mind, that gift of peace of mind. And it shows them that you're not just choosing to age in place, but that you are proactively planning for a safe place, as safe a place as possible, to enable you and support your choice to age at home. And asking them for suggestions or assistance with what should be done first, or how it should be done, or by whom, or if there should be a more professional safety check for your home, includes them in it. And when it comes to making the final decision about what will be done and when and by whom, or if there should be a more professional so you can then clarify what your choices are. You're opening a conversation here based on some information, and you can clarify what your choices are. So in the future, if you can't make those decisions, they know what you would prefer. And you also are clarifying who is in control. And so we're addressing the two issues that are a friction point and hoping to come to a point of some commonality there. So Jim, now I'm going to hand it back to you so you can go through that self-assessment, and our viewers can then make their list and go forward.
Well, that's great, Kathy. Thank you so much for that great introduction. And if I can just add very quickly, because I can't really improve on anything Kathy's shared with you, but from my own personal experience with my mom, what we were able to determine together was that her safety was, in fact, the pathway to her future independence. Please don't disconnect the two. Safety means independence. And if we have to take a few sort of modest steps, which admittedly means change, and I know change is not easy for any of us, but if we need to take a few modest steps and change the way we live in our homes, if that means future independence, I would argue that's a good thing. So as we go through the checklist, think about that, because some of these may represent a change for you. And, while we may not have needed this or considered this necessary when we were 50, it may now be necessary. And again, it's just a pathway to more independence. And I know that that's a big priority for us. Okay, let's take a look at the first set of checklist items. So number one, clutter. Are rooms cluttered with clothing, magazines, books, or other items? Is there too much furniture for the space, right? We would ask everyone to either answer yes or no. If those of us are not sure how to address that, just consider this. If you find yourself meandering left, right, stopping, walking around things on the floor to get from room A to room B, that's a pretty good indication that you may have too many things, items, pieces of furniture, armoires, even ottomans, for example, on the floor. You should be able to walk a straight line from room A to room B without too much left, right, or lateral movement. So those are the things I'd ask you to think about there. Okay. Trip and fall hazards. Well, do you have throw rugs or torn carpet? Throw rugs are not good. The floor should be free of them. There shouldn't be any lips or heightened areas on the floor where you have to lift your feet up and over things. Do all rugs and bath mats have anti-slip pads underneath, right? Because oftentimes if there's enough dirt collected on the pads, they become slippery and then therefore not very helpful for you. Are electrical cords run across any pathways in the home? Again, are they in your way? The best policy is to have safe flooring, hardwood flooring, where there are no differences in height, so that if you happen to not be looking down, you're safe to move from room to room. I remember with my mom, we removed everything short of a small entry, really a mat at the front door. But other than that, there were no other carpets or rugs left in the home. So you should think about that, because this is where people tend to toe into, if you will, right? They're not lifting their feet as well as they once might have been able to do. And they grab the front of their foot against a throw carpet and they find themselves falling forward. So that's important to consider. All right, next. All right, well, this is a good one. Grab bars. We think this is essential when, certainly when gaining access to a shower stall. Even more important if we haven't retrofitted our bathrooms, and I can talk about that for a moment, to an environment where it's a walk-in shower, even a walk-in shower with a built-in bench and a shower head that can be held by hand so that we don't have to stand once we're in the shower. But grab bars are essential, both at the toilet and around it and in and around the shower area, so that we can stabilize ourselves as we walk in and out of that area. Okay, what's next up? Lighting. Is there adequate lighting throughout the home? I often find, and again, I'll point back to my mom's home, there were several lamps, shaded lamps in the living room and her bedroom. It provided, frankly, very poor lighting. So what we did was we had overhead lighting, dimmer lighting, flush mounted into the ceilings. There were actually 4 lights in each room, and it created a very bright environment without any shadows at all, because the light's coming straight down from ceiling to floor. That is the best approach. Number B, or letter B, excuse me, are all light switches accessible without having to reach or bend? This is really important. Let's make sure that wherever we're going to turn on a light, that we don't have to create excessive reach, bending over to get at a light switch. Oftentimes we find individuals have an on-off switch that's attached to the cord that's plugged in the wall. That cord is now draped behind the end table. The wheel or the switch is behind the table, and people are stretching needlessly to get at the light switch. We really don't want to do that if we have any options. And then finally, C, again, the electrical cords running across any pathways in the home. That's a no-no. Those things should be eliminated. Mobility, right? The aches and pains in our knees and hips as we try to get up out from a chair or a couch. Couple of things we can do there, right? So if the answer to that is yes, I'm finding it more difficult, there's some options, right? We can certainly add a pillow under us to prop us up a bit more, but that oftentimes means that I'm too high in the chair and I'm not comfortable because I can't get my neck and head rested against the back of the chair. There are options, certainly chairs out there that we can look at medical supply facilities where the chair itself mechanically or electronically can lift us up out of the chair. So as we move to walk away from the chair, we're nearly standing with the help of that piece of furniture. Accessibility. Are the items in your room, whether that be kitchen, bathroom, too high or too low? Am I bending down underneath the sink when I shouldn't have to? Am I stretching, perhaps up on my tippy toes to gain access? These are easy things to resolve, and I would really encourage you, if you're finding that you're stretching because it was easy to do 20 years ago, please find ways to make sure that these things are within easy arm's reach. Easy arm's reach. Do you use a step stool or a ladder to reach into closets or the garage? Same idea. You shouldn't be doing that, right? It's time to get those items close to you so that you don't have to reach to get those items, okay? It's not worth it. You shouldn't be stretching, bending in any way, shape, or form. They should be easily reachable. Bathroom accessibility. All right, well, I talked about this briefly around the grab bars, but this is really very important. Is the shower easily accessible? So what do we mean by that? If you're still stepping over a traditional bathtub, we would encourage you to start considering having that bathtub removed, okay? You shouldn't be stepping over the bathtub, especially if you don't have the benefit of a grab bar to help you up and over it. If you're grabbing on to, God forbid, a shower curtain or something that isn't fully stable, that's a no-no. So the shower should be easily accessible, and frankly, that means a walk-in shower. You shouldn't be stepping over anything to gain access to the shower or exit it, for that matter. Is the seat for the toilet raised for a safer use? So again, same idea as the chair. If I'm having difficulties getting up, the same would be true using a toilet seat that might be too low. We recommend finding an extension or a safety seat that actually sits in its own frame above the toilet itself. And again, the grab bars, as I mentioned to you earlier. There should be one immediately outside the shower stall, and at least one, I would argue two, that run along the entire length of the shower stall so that you're holding on to something anytime you choose to. Fire safety. Well, this is, goodness, so important, right? Are the smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors in place and operational? This is easy enough to do. There are smoke alarms now that are maintenance free for 10 full years. They're easily available at a Lowe's or a Home Depot. You install them. It's the last you have to think about it for a decade. Do you have an evacuation plan in case of the fire, right? If there is only one point of entry and exit to the home, and many of us only have one point of entry and exit, do we have a clear path to get out in the event of a smoke or fire situation? Are all pathways out of the home accessible and clutter-free, right? We mentioned this earlier on. If there's too many items that we've collected over the years, and it's creating a situation where I have to move laterally, left and right, to get to the door, that's not a good situation. And you really should start considering removing some items, perhaps donating them to a charitable organization. Stairways. Are the staircases well lit and free of clutter? Again, there should never be anything on the stairwell. I don't care if were used to keeping canned goods or the cat food or a broom leaning up against the wall going down to the basement or upstairs. It's time to get those items off the stairwell. And of course, are the handrails rock solid and sturdy. As if you're leaning on those things and they're creaking or moving, it's time to get a screwdriver and a new set of wood screws and have somebody help you tighten that up. Okay. Quite truthfully, the best policy is not to be going up and down stairs, but if you still have them and need to access an upstairs bedroom or a basement, please make sure that it's free of clutter and the handrails are tightly fastened to the walls. Okay. Temperature. Well, I know with my mom, she was always mucking around with the thermostat. So obviously, I'm sure you're all more than able to take care of this. Is the temperature too hot or too cold? And does everyone in the home have access to thermostats? So this should be a fairly straightforward one. Most people are setting the thermostat, whether that be in the winter or the summer, for a temperature that's comfortable for them. So we don't need to spend much time there. All right, number 11, and we're almost at the end. Oh, you know what? This is a big one, right? Many of us have had our beds for years and years. Then the big question is it the right height? One of the things that my mom struggled with was that her old bed was simply too high off the ground. She had difficulties getting into it at night and probably more importantly, getting out of it in the morning. So we had to find a bed frame. The mattress was fine, but the bed frame simply was too high. And we had to go find a bed frame that was lower to the ground. So once she swung her legs out from underneath the covers in the morning, her feet were comfortably planted firmly on the ground. She didn't find herself trying to slide off the end of the bed so her feet could reach the floor. That's not a good position to be in. So again, is it easily accessible to both get in and out of? And if it's not, we really encourage you to call Raymore and Flanagan or some reputable retailer of bedding and find a bed frame that's lower to the ground. Okay, number 12. Are there rooms so dense with furniture that walking freely is a problem? Again, this all comes back to the clutter. And so we talked earlier about magazines and knickknacks that may be in your way. The same is true of furniture. If there's too many pieces in the room, it's time to clear it out. We all have a tendency to hang on to things longer than we need to. And quite truthfully, if anyone is close to the way I live, there's one or two chairs in the entire home that I make myself comfortable in. So my question then is, why do we need all this other stuff? Okay. It's time to start taking stock in what you no longer need and donate it to those that could make use of it. And finally, is the furniture worn or unstable? Please, if things are shaky or creaky, legs are moving back and forth, that's not a piece of furniture that we want to sit in. Okay, let's make sure we get that fixed. Food safety, right? And medication, right? Is there spoiled or expired food in the refrigerator or pantry cabinets? Please, I know things can last a long time in the dry goods world. Take a look at those things, and if it passed expiration date, get rid of them, throw them away. And that's certainly true with medications in the kitchen and the medicine cabinet as well. If things have been around too long, vitamins that expired 18 months ago, for example, Tylenols, Advils, please get rid of them. There's no room for them in the house. All right, so home technologies. And this is the last point we want you to think about. Does everyone in the home have access to a phone or a cell phone? I would tell you nowadays it's important to have a cell phone, because even if you're out and about in town or running chores, it's great to know that a loved one has access to you anytime that they need. And is there a readily accessible emergency contact list? I think most of us are pretty good with this. We usually have a list of emergency contact numbers somewhere near the telephone in the house, whether that be the fire or police or medical emergency services access. So, what would I like you to come away with on these 14 points? Give it some thought. And if anything is out of sync, if you're answering yes to many of these or no, answering in the negative, and there should be an answer yes, you really should work to align your home and get it better aligned with these 14 points. This is for your safety and then by extension, your own independence. All right, Kathy, I can pass this back to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jim. I wanted to make one comment. I share about when you go to a hotel room now these days, I find that the hotel room beds are so high that it's really dangerous. I mean, I literally have to throw myself onto the bed, kind of, like the hips just don't work the way they used to, kind of thing. So I laugh about that, but it's not really a funny thing. It's but there is a change. I can see the change. So I want to thank you for that, and I hope that everyone does take stock and open up a conversation with family members and caregivers, and makes a checklist of things that need to be done to make your home, your choice to age at home, a safer place to be. Just want to remind you that out on YouTube, we have previous Wednesdays in the Hub, the series on fraud and scams. And you can find a list of those and other YouTube presentations that we have out on our website, northjerseyvillages.org. I also wanted to again thank Jim D'Elia and our North Jersey Villages board member, Megan Labruno, who introduced us to Jim and brought him onto this program, and our IT person, Columbus. And I thank you, and I thank you all for joining us, and I hope that we've been of value. If you have any ideas for subsequent programs, please do be in touch with us. My email address is Kathy@northjerseyvillages.org, and we would be happy to provide any subject programs that you are interested in. Thanks again. Have a great day.
Bye now.
Bye.